Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the active participants in this session, the attendees right this moment, and indeed to everyone who will see it later on once the session is posted up on the relevant platforms. My name is Simpiwe Madlanga from the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory. But let me begin with saying welcome to our National Science Week 2021 program. And National Science Week is an initiative by the Department of Science and Innovation to celebrate, to have society have an appreciation and a better understanding of science and what it is that as a country we are doing. We have the Department of Science and Innovation, which is governing all science, technology and innovation in the country. We then have the National Research Foundation, which is an independent statutory body, and it came about from an act, and it itself will be known by many for the funding that it gives to students in university, and it also manages national facilities across the country. It has multiple business units, and so SASTA, which is the South African Agency for Science and Technology Advancement, who are facilitating, running, coordinating programs like National Science Week, are a business unit of the NRF. And then we have CEREO, the organization from which I come, which is also a business unit of the NRF. And it happens to be a national facility in that research is done. And SARAO manages and incorporates all radio astronomy related research at the national level in South Africa. And of course, there are projects that we are involved with, and those form partnerships with other international role players. And so I would like to just touch on CEREO in terms of what links it to us doing the National Science Week activities. It is a research facility, but we also have science engagement as part of the departments and divisions in the organization. And that entails us sharing with the public in various different ways what the organization does, synthesizing the science in ways that anyone, broadly speaking, might be able to understand and appreciate why we need to do research as a country, why there is this investment in the infrastructure, the human capital development, and indeed what impact we have in real time as we move, but also to stress that because it's all for research, it's not necessarily profit driven. Some of the investments give reward over time. And we try and make people understand that there are then opportunities that will come as we are trying to develop innovations, technologies, and as we work toward the knowledge economy that our government usually speaks about. I will leave it at that for now and just go on to a bio for our speaker today so that I might hand over to her. And so if you'll just allow me to read the bio so that I ensure that I'm definitely doing justice to our speaker here. So our speaker is Dr. Sinenhlanhla Sikhosana, who hails from the KwaZulu-Natal province. She currently is at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and she is in a program, postdoctoral program, which involves CEREO, and actually joined the committee, Astrophysics Research Center's Committee on Inclusion. And I believe this is in the workplace and in the fraternity of science and research. And that's, I think, is something that's important in light of us being in Women's Month. This is the first week of Women's Month in South Africa. And so that in itself talks to some role that she plays in that space. And so today I'm hoping that as she continues with the program, a lot of people might be inspired and indeed appreciate how much is done at the different levels. All right, Dr. Sikhosana, I hand it over to you and you may begin the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simpiwe. So I'll just share my screen so that we can get started. Okay, is it visible on your side?
It is visible. It is visible. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so as I have been introduced, my name is Sunit Landraskosana, and I'm currently a Sarau postdoctoral fellow based at UKZN. And so today I'll just briefly be sharing my PhD journey and also sharing how funding, which was from Sarau, was crucial in my decision making at every point, choosing whether I stay in academia and pursue astronomy, which is my passion, or actually go to industry so that I can be able to support family and provide, And so I hope that through this presentation, I can inspire even just one person and also show people that it is indeed possible with the necessary support. Okay, so before I get to the juicy stories, I'll start just by introducing everyone to the research that I do. So my research is on diffuse emission in galaxy clusters. So basically individual galaxies like our Milky Way don't like isolated environments and often exist in groups of about 1,000. And these groups are actually bound together by gravity. And so these are massive objects, one of the largest gravitationally bound objects in the universe. And their mass is more than 1 billion times the mass of our own sun. And so when these large objects actually collide, a lot of energy is released. The most energy released since the Big Bang, which was the beginning of the universe. And so when this energy is dissipated, it is actually injected into electrons that are in the galaxy clusters. And now because you have these highly energetic electrons, and you also have magnetic fields within the plasma that exists between the galaxies in the cluster, then you find that you have what we call synchrotron emission, which is basically these highly energetic electrons spiraling along magnetic field lines and then emitting photons. And so these photons we actually observe using radio telescopes. And for my postdoc, I'm actually using the South African Meerkat telescope to study these photons. And the reason that we're interested in these diffuse radio sources is because we want to find out, first of all, the origin of these seed electrons that produce the emission, and also how these diffuse sources actually evolve over time. And so in essence, actually understanding how large-scale structure evolves over time. And so that is, in a nutshell, what my research is about. And so how did I end up here? So now we get to the stories. I was born in a town in the south coast of KZN called Harding, and I'm from a village called Iqambu, also close by to the town Harding. And so, as you can see, it is the village, like the deep villages. And so growing up, I was actually exposed to a lot of adventure. As you can see, there's a forest across. So this is home. There's a forest, and whenever we'd go to collect wood, we'd always find interesting things, or even going out to herd cattle, there was always like interesting discoveries along our way. And so from a very young age, I was very inquisitive as to why things happen the way they do, or how things happen. And that essentially developed to the love of science. And when I was in high school, I was actually I fell in love with both maths and physics because they were like the problem-solving subjects. However, because of the limitations in terms of exposure to the availability of careers such as astronomy, I was not aware that I could actually do astronomy in KZN or actually be in a career such as astronomy. And so it was only in my matric year that I was actually exposed to such careers. And it was through a program, which was a Career Week program, which was hosted by UKZN at that time, which was the Astrophysics and Cosmology Research Unit. And not only did they introduce me to astronomy and cosmology, but they also mentioned the funding careers that were, the funding opportunities that were available, including what was SKASA back then, and which is now Sarau. And so I was like, oh my goodness. So there's a career where I can do both maths and physics for a living. So I was like, just definitely sold. However, remember that I come from a village called Iqam. So now I had to go back to my family, to my mother and my grandmother, and explain, okay, this is the career that I'm actually choosing. And needless to say that they were confused, to say the least, and also a bit disappointed because they had made up their mind that their daughter is going to be a medical doctor who's going to be healing people and basically elevating their financial status as well. And so when I told them about this career, they were like, what is it? What are you going to be doing for a living? Just break it down to us. And so whenever I try to explain to my grandmother what my career is actually about, this is where we end up getting. And it's basically that I will be reporting the weather. So basically a meteorologist. So I guess that might speak to me needing to improve my science communication skills, but also just to show that they couldn't just envision what this career entailed and how I would actually earn a living. However, because I had applied for the Sarau funding, I was actually even able to proceed, even though they were a bit skeptical. And of course, not to mention that my teachers as well were so keen on me becoming a medical doctor. And no, I have nothing against medical doctors. It was just not my passion. And so when I just boldly told everyone that this is the career I'm choosing, the funding that I actually had received, which enabled me to kickstart this career, was very crucial because I was able to then say, okay, so since I will not be actually financially depending on you guys, can you give me this opportunity to actually go ahead and study astronomy? And so that is where it all began in 2011. That's where I started my undergrad, which was at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and of course funded by Sarau. And so what was also crucial with the funding is that it also came with mentorship, which I think also played a vital role in all the decisions I had to make throughout my career. I was assigned a mentor who later became my supervisor, who was a sounding voice whenever I needed to make career decisions. And also when I was in situations where finances were getting really hard. And so he was able to actually even reach out to the people and SKA and mention how it is essential that people from backgrounds such as me actually are needed to stay within the pipeline and actually proceed into academic careers. And so because I had that sounding voice, I was able to stay within astronomy. And as I mentioned before, funding saves careers. And so the first step was actually being able to start with the BSc because I had the SKASA funding. But that's not where it ended, because when I And I had finished with my honors degree, which was an honors in applied mathematics with a project in cosmology. My family was expecting that I would now be at a stage where I can support them, as I'd been studying for 4 years at university. And so then again, I was faced with a decision. Do I continue with academia, or do I actually go out to industry so that I am able to support my family? And so once again, receiving the Sorrow funding for my postdoctoral, which is now the master's level, enabled me to stay within academia. And also, having the funding, what it allowed for me is that while I was able to provide for family and also continue living my passion, I did not have the financial burden to actually go out now and look for part-time jobs or actually tutoring jobs that might have distracted me from my studies. And so I was able to fully focus on my research. And as a result, I was able to put in all my efforts and actually excel within my studies. And so I received quite a few recognitions throughout from my undergrad and throughout my postgraduate studies as well. And so now, because of this, it actually caused a ripple effect, because my family could also see that, oh, she's achieving so much, which means she really loves this career. And so they also ended up being supportive. And so this is the ripple effect that it actually had. And so from the pictures, as you can see, I was one of the South African Women in Science recipients in 2018. In 2019, I represented South Africa at the Nobel laureate meetings, which are hosted in Lindau in Germany, where we had the opportunity to meet sort of the rock stars of physics. And so that was really exciting. And I was also a recipient of the L'Oreal for Women in Science grant. And so these are basically the fruits of having a stable financial support structure, which then enabled me to focus on my studies and ensure that I excel within my studies. And of course, a large part of the funding was also travel grants. And so what that aspect of travel grants opened up to me was the ability to travel throughout the world. And so, of course, given the income bracket of my family, this would have only been a dream had I not pursued such a career. So, of course, traveling was awesome, and going out to all these various places, which is like in the US, in India, in Vietnam, in Germany, and so on. It just opened up my world. And not only that, because I was going on like research visits and conferences, I was able to actually present my research to an international audience. And so as a result, it also gave me confidence within the research that I was doing, because I could see that, you know what, it's not just like a local, like a UKZN or South African research, but it's like research that is able to hold ground even at an international stage. And so that actually boosts my confidence and enabled me to actually continue striving to achieve better and achieve better results as well. However, what is really has been close to my heart when it comes to living my passion is the ripple effect that having someone of my background, and of course being an African female, the ripple effect it has with when it comes to outreach. And so just to mention with my own personal journey from undergrad and postgrad, of course, I had an amazing supervisor who was supportive in all aspects in terms of my research and being able to sit down and listen to what I was going through at home. However, what was missing from the picture is actually having someone who I can relate to, not just in terms of a research career, but someone who has a story, a background that I could relate to, and then project myself in terms of like, okay, if she was able or if he was able to achieve that, surely I can too. You know, someone who you can speak about in terms of like collecting wood in the forest or collecting water from the river, but still making it to an international stage when it comes to astronomy. And so because I had that element missing, I actually made it a mission that I involve myself in outreach initiatives so that I can show the younger generation out there that it's actually possible, it's actually doable. And we have these funding structures such as Sarao that enable you to pursue your passions while also being able to, of course, support family, which is sometimes an obstruction to people actually choosing such careers because they think, okay, after 3 years, I actually need to find a job so that I can be able to support family. And so some of the outreach initiatives that I have been involved in, which is like Synergy Lab, which was mentoring matriculant students in 2020, and it was during the difficult period of COVID, and also outreach initiatives where we basically go out and tell students about careers in astronomy and funding opportunities such as Sarao. And also exciting is what we usually run at UKZN, which is called Be a Scientist for a Week. So this is where we basically call students from different high schools and different backgrounds, so like from your townships or from different high schools, and we basically expose them to the different or the various careers within science. And so I'd usually just run a few programs with them, or like build a solar system or make a presentation. So this was one such example. And so through my story, I was actually able to shine the light to others and actually show them that it is possible. And also, as Simpiwe mentioned at the beginning, another passion that I have is, the truth is that the science sphere in South Africa as it stands still needs transformation in terms of the people that are able to engage either at postgrad level or even at academic level. So one thing that I actually did last year was like participate in the South African Young Scientist Program, which is like a blog, which was like a blog where we basically voice out our opinions, and those are shared with the NRA for like with the larger science community. So I was part of the SAYS blog where I basically shared how, from my experiences and my opinion, on how we can actually ensure that the system works in such a way that true transformation can actually be achieved. And as Simpiwe mentioned as well, I'm also part of a diversity and inclusion committee in the astrophysics research unit here at UKZN, because I truly believe that when you have an environment that is conducive, an environment that is allowing for people to be themselves, that is when you actually attract people to these careers that are usually sort of seen for a particular group. And so when you have such environments, that's when you're able to attract people, and not only attract them, but also ensure that you make them stay within academia and not at the end of the day leave due to harsh environments or because of systematic barriers and so on. And so this is basically has been my journey. And as I mentioned from the beginning, crucial, a fundamental element in me actually being able to stay within academia was the fact that I had the funding, and which led to then my family actually being supportive of the career that I had chosen. So I think this is where I will end with the formal presentation. Thank you everyone for listening and for joining. Simpiwe, I guess back to you.
All right. Thank you. If you could perhaps stop sharing the screen and just allow for our faces to show a bit bigger. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Sikhosana. I believe it begs mentioning that you're a very powerful communicator. And I would say by extension, a science communicator, in that even as you explain, excuse me, some of the research that you do, some of what you've been going to different platforms, different countries, sharing, you are able to do it in such a way that anyone who's listening can follow, actually pay attention to you. It's the tone, it's the way in which you are explaining the concepts and linking it to a lived experience that is yours, but how it links to the greater scheme of things of why we do research in the first place, the following of passions, and understanding yourself as a person as to what speaks to you, what do you feel you can offer the best to in terms of your career and your study choice, and what would bring most benefit, I do believe, to any field, because it's about bringing together what you feel you can offer and then having that field where it talks to you. And I think this journey of yours has come across in a very human way, so that whoever is listening, watching this, is not just being told about technical terms, about some events that are happening in this week, but be able to connect with human beings that are coming similar backgrounds, that are telling it as it is, and highlighting the fundamental struggles and challenges of a support structure and the funding, which is a real challenge for many people. And I must also say that listening to you and also just knowing sort of some of your journey, it seems your relationship with SKASA and now Sereo is a match made in heaven. It has been so long. My understanding is that from undergrad, you've been with Sereo, not just getting funding, but getting the mentorship and the exposure to different platforms, different people, mentors, went on to honors, went on to masters, PhD, and now even at a postdoctoral level, you are still in the program. And so you are one of the perfect people for us to have had for this session, so that it's not Sereo talking about how much it assists people and these opportunities in an abstract way, but have you as a person who's living it, who knows the ups and the downs, the challenges and the joys, and indeed talking about the dynamics you had at home, but being able to have the opportunity and privilege to say, please allow me to study this because I fortunately even have all this support. And so I believe it worked out beautifully. And I know there are many others. For example, in 2018, when I first met you, we were organizing a science camp for learners, which is still part of your passion, giving back, staying a few weeks in the Northern Cape, trying to assist learners in maths and physics, doing practical demonstrations and all of these. You were part of the cohort of postgraduate students that I had coordinated from all the universities that Sarao funds, and we organized the trip, ensured that we had all the equipment, and you raised your hand and you were there. And so what you are saying here today to this audience is something that you truly live and express fully.
That's true.
So at that point, I would just like to ask, is there any other comment you would like to make? And also perhaps I'll have my technical assistant, Ms. Oluetu Faku, perhaps assisting us. I'll check the chats and we might respond to those comments or those questions. Other than that, I would encourage people to Google you. Google is a search engine. Beyond just this session that we've had, they might be able to watch videos, see the blog you spoke of, see news articles, and perhaps even find you on the social media platforms. And though you are busy, I'm sure here and there, now and then, you will have time to respond to people as you've already shown that you're always willing to impart as much as you can. All right, so let me give you a chance to just perhaps a final remark, and then we'll hear from our technical assistant. All right. All right, I see a question, but perhaps you would like to say something initially, and then the questions will be dealt with just now.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you very much for all that you have mentioned. And I just saw a comment on the chat that Soraro is changing people's lives, and it is very true. It is true. And what I guess from my own experience is that it doesn't just change an individual, it causes a ripple effect. As you mentioned as well, that now the people that had been funded by Soraro actually went out to the Northern Cape, and we had practicals, and we had like tutoring lessons to actually try to improve another person's life as well. And so I think that largely speak to the journey that I have had, that through my life being transformed, I was then in turn able to actually touch other people's lives as well in a way that directs them to science and shows them, like whenever I give talks, maybe public talks, it's like how does astronomy affect community, like how does it improve community? And such stories as mine, a direct lived experience that shows how this funding from government actually translates into changing people's lives. So that would be my closing comment.
All right, thank you for those remarks. My assistant says she has forwarded a few questions to you on the chat directly. If you are comfortable to see them, they're easily readable. You may proceed perhaps in answering those. There is one that spoke about the imposter syndrome. And I guess that sense of being in these powerful places and platforms and being given chance to direct a narrative and contribute to things, but sometimes feeling as though you're out of place, so it's still unreal and it's not necessarily a place where you should be, and all of that. Just coming to terms with such things, and perhaps any advice to young people on how to deal with this, and perhaps how do I sort of identify this in themselves so that indeed they might work on it and manage it.
Okay, so for that question, I'll just mention, so the first time I heard that term, imposter syndrome, was actually, I was in a research visit in Princeton. And, it's one of the highly ranked universities. And even me being there, like, I felt so out of place. But like when I heard about people in the audience, because it was a discussion point that we had, people in the audience that are so established, like researchers that have been in the field for such a long time, talking about how even up until now, they still feel like they're out of place, or like how someone's going to catch them out and be like, oh no, we found out that you're not so clever as you claim. And so I guess the first point is being able to speak about it. You know what the imposter syndrome usually does is that it wants you to be isolated, like to feel like, oh my goodness, this is such a shame. Like if I talk about it, someone's going to find out and think that I'm really not worthy of being part of such a community. And so when you find people that you're able to have comfortable discussions about and actually talk about it, you actually see that it's very common, and especially for women, because I guess to a certain extent, women in science has been in such a manner that, people say science is reserved for a certain type of people. The image I had of a scientist when I was growing up is, the Einstein crazy hair, old white man in a lab. So that was the image that I have. So now when you have a person like me being in such a career, you like always feel out of place. But it's just to know that you're not alone. I actually still feel like, oh my goodness, is this real? Am I even supposed to be here? So the first point is to acknowledge that you have worked hard and you deserve to be here. No matter what this little voice in your mind tells you, you deserve to be here and you have worked and earned your space. And so that is the advice that I would give, and to just talk about it so that it's not something that just isolates you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a really insightful response to that question, and it gave it many layers. And listening to what you've just said, I think allows a person to then find what it means to them, how that imposter syndrome might present in their life, and how, because people differ, and you might find because it might be described just a certain way, a person might think, oh, that means I have a different problem. But generally, such things can relate to different ways. And in answering that question about 18-year-old you and all of that, I'd just like to also read a comment. It's not a question, but I think it's important, from one of our participants, from Ishmael. It says, thank you so much. I find it extremely motivational. I love using the journeys like yours to motivate ordinary young ones to dream big and realize their potential. I trust you'll be available for us to request your time in the future on career orientation and the like. Keep it up. So there are various other comments that are thanking you for what you've shared, and of course talking about the session. But I felt this one is long enough and touches on the points that other participants and other attendees have mentioned, sort of summing things up. All right. Other than that, I don't see further questions. Is there anything you see on your side, Dr. Sikhosana? Or shall we then wrap up? I hand it over to you.
Okay, so I guess the last question that I also see is the one from Apiwe, so I'll address that in closing. And so on the comment, thank you very much. And as I mentioned, like, I'm very passionate about outreach, and so if I have time, I will always avail myself. So do make sure to maybe get my contact afterwards and just reach out. And if I'm available, I will definitely make the time. And so to Apiwe's question on what I would advise my 18-year-old self, I think, there was a comment that was made by the previous Miss Universe, Uzozibini Tunzi, which is take up space and cement yourself, However, in that process of taking up space, in that process of going into spaces that you were previously, or maybe you are the minority in that, like in that process, there's a lot that you go through. There's a lot of fighting that you go through, whether it's internal fighting or fighting the systems or fighting the environment. And so what that tends to do, or a pattern that I have seen, is that it hardens one's heart and sort of maybe makes one to actually become, maybe to an extent, even bitter, or like become what they did not want to be, or like become the people that I actually did not want to become. And so to my 18-year-old self, I would say, yes, fight to take up space, fight to be in spaces where you probably be a minority. However, never lose the essence of who you are. Never lose how you like to laugh, like in a goofy manner, or like to wear what is not as seen as a scientific outfit, whatever that is, but like just fight to be true to yourself and true to the core values that you uphold. Thank you.
What a powerful note to end our session on. I want to thank everyone who has attended today. Thank you, Dr. Sikhosana. Thank you very much for sharing the insights that you have and availing yourself and sharing that you are always willing to participate, collaborate, and assist wherever it can assist people, different ages, different contexts. And your email address has just been posted up on the chats for anyone who would like to note that. But like I said, people might look for you on the various platforms and definitely on the internet. And so with that, we've come to the end of our session. Please do look out for the posting up on the various platforms once everything has been edited and made presentable. We will continue with these sessions for the next few days. So please stay tuned for our other speakers, and we've allowed creative freedom to our speakers in terms of what they share and how they share it, so that there is uniqueness in every one of these sessions. So looking forward to seeing participants here that are here today, and of course others as we continue to share details on how to join us. Thank you very much. Thank you and goodbye. This is the end of our session.